Welcome back. I'm Jeff, and this is episode 12 of the CKong series, where I am reproducing the arcade version of Donkey Kong using C11 and STL2. In this episode, we are going to implement the long introduction. This is where Donkey Kong climbs up the level and then he jumps into place and causes the girders to collapse, and that only happens once before you begin the entire game. So it's kind of like a little mini cutscene. So really briefly, I'm going to run the game and oops, there you go. That's what we have so far, although it needs some work. But actually, before we even look at that, let's go to the game file here and let's have it run through the typical startup, and then we'll put the other line of code back. So in the last episode we got the insert coin state and the attract sequence working. I subsequently finished laying out the Donkey Kong sprite actor, so that's correct now. And it still flashes during the entire time. It's not 100% like what the arcade does, but it's pretty close. So, okay, let's comment that out, put in our temporary test state because it'll just allow us to jump right to where we're working. Okay, so as you can see, we've got an actor, Donkey Kong climbing with, he's carrying Pauline, and now that I look at this, I think I may in fact have, yeah, I'm one off. I should be using the tile, the next tile up for Pauline, her feet here. This should be, okay, so let's fix that real quick. So that would be an actor, and the Pauline sprite is actually a part of that. So I think this should be 20. Because in the real arcade, you see the soles of her feet as she's, yeah, ooh. Oops. Somehow. Interesting. Oh, right. I gotta change it in every frame. Duh. Okay. Yeah, this should be 20. And then we're probably gonna have to adjust the location of that tile a little bit. There you go. Yeah, so her tile needs to move up a pixel and to the left a bit. So up and to the left. Almost. I would say move to the left one more. Okay. There we go. Okay, that looks correct. And then, okay, so I'm going to run the arcade here in MAME because I think the timing is just slightly off. I think he's climbing a bit quickly. Yeah, so I think the animation frames are ticking over just a bit too fast. So maybe we'll increase these to 500 milliseconds. So let's test that first. That's a little slow. I think it was moving a bit faster. So let's make it 350. Okay, maybe 300. Okay, so now what I would like to do is I would like to tie the animation to the movement. So in a state machine where we go into the long introduction state, we are setting the actor animation here. And let's create a callback. So I say a bonus. We can just, oops. I can just cut and paste one that I already have. We'll call this Kong climb anim callback. And we'll rename this one so it's a bit shorter. Oops. Okay. And then what we want to do here, we're just going to return true because we don't want to disable the animation. But what we do want to do here is, well, first let's go back to the long introduction and let's set the actor's animation callback equal to the address of that. So it was Kong climb anim callback. Then right now in the update, I'm moving him up. So let's move that to our callback. So this is going to mirror what happens, I think, in the arcade a little bit closer. So when the animation completes, yeah, then we move up. Now we're not moving quite enough at this point. So let's move him up 4 pixels at a time. Still pretty slow, I think. So let's set our climb. Let's set this to we had 250 to start. I think we might end up back there. As you can see that the movement then is tied to the the finishing of, oh yeah, and we have to fix the help thing is running when it shouldn't be. So let's go back to 200. I think we had 250. Let's make it 200. We can also have him move more per animation. And yeah, that's closer. So let's do this. I'm gonna rerun MAME. And we can restart the state in our game by going back here. So yeah, the animation's actually going pretty quickly. I would say okay. So let's actually let's do this. Let's have him move 8 pixels. That's half a sprite worth. Actually, that's a whole screen tile worth. And I think that's, yeah. I think he's moving in a smaller subset. I have to kind of eyeball it, and it's. I would say he's moving 4 pixels, maybe, or maybe 6. Yeah, because he's moving in between. So I would say it's like 4 or 5 pixels, and then the animation is a bit faster. So let's speed it up. Let's bring it down to 150. Still a little slow. I would say the climbing part is about right. Okay, so let's, or in terms of the, it takes him about 5 seconds to get there. And ours, it's going to be twice that. Yeah, see, now the animation is a little too fast. And these delays, these are in milliseconds, and it's using the timer system. And he needs to stop just as his hand is reaching that top girder. Yeah, right about there. I'd say even go down another 5 pixels. Okay, so I think here's the challenge now, because we can make him ascend faster, but it's a little bit too chunky. I don't know. That's not too bad. Running them both simultaneously is tricky. So let's do this. 5, run. Ah, darn it. The animation's a bit fast. So all right, so here's the trick now. By tying it to the animation, it's a little difficult to get the two of them. I want the ascent, the vertical motion, to be a bit smoother than it is. So I tried tying it to the animation callback. Let's change our approach there a little bit so we can vary the two of them independently. So let's put this code in here temporarily, and let's create another timer, and we're going to call this one, or we're going to set this one up, and we're going to say about every 75 milliseconds, let's move him up. Okay, so we're going to take a slightly different approach here. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to move him otherwise we're going to return false to kill the timer. Okay, so we're going to start the climb timer. So this is a timer that's specifically dedicated to moving the actor on Y, moving him up. And then the animation timer we can fine tune so that it looks better independent of the movement. Yes, so this actually then makes the movement much smoother, which is what we want. We don't want it to be so jerky. So let's even slow the movement down a bit. That's closer. Okay. So let's say a 2 pixel increment is pretty good. And then let's fine tune the timer on that. And then let's slow down the animation a bit. Let's bring this to 200. That's pretty good. Maybe just a bit slow on the, not the animation. I think the animation might be about right. I would like to, so let's run that, go. Maybe too fast. That's a pretty good. That's not bad. Yeah, it's about right. Maybe just a tiny bit. Because ideally it's going to fit with the music. We don't have the sound in there. We might have to come back and fine tune it. But that's what we're looking for. Yeah. Okay. So when we get to this point where we're going to disable this timer, we want to stop the animation on Donkey Kong. Now that's going to make him, yeah, I was worried about that. It's a bug. Yeah. It's going to make him disappear. We don't really want that to happen. What we really want to happen we want a single frame here. So we're going to do a jump. Okay, so let's define the jump, which is really just one frame. Okay, so then we're going to pick the jump. And that should just freeze him on that one frame. Yep. Okay. Now what happens is he actually kind of zooms up quickly above the girder. So let's watch that. MAME doesn't remember monitors. I would say we've got the pacing pretty close. So he stops and he zooms up just above the girder, then he changes to the standing position. Okay, so and interestingly enough, I think the arcade stops on the other foot, not the one we did. Let me double check that. Yeah. Okay, so it stops on the right foot is down. Yeah, I got it backwards. All right, so let's fix that, which should be easy. So we'll just take these tiles out and we'll go to the climb. The second frame is the one that has the tiles in it that we want. Okay, so let's run that. And like I say, when we get the sound in the game, we'll have to come back. Okay, so now he's stopping on that. And we can adjust our code a little bit here so that he is a little higher so it looks more natural. Close. Yeah, it's perfect. Perfect. Okay, so now we just need to get him to zoom up. So now to do that, let's create a little mini state machine in here. We'll say Kong climb, Kong jump, or Kong Kong jump up, and Kong jump left, then Kong roar. So those are the different things he climbs up, he leaps onto the top girder, he changes, then he jumps to the left, then he does the little grimace, right? Does a little roar. So the easy thing to do here then is to just have a Kong intro. Let's do this type def. We'll prefix these with that. So Kong intro state T. So we start off, we always start off in the climb. And so when we come into the long introduction, that's what we set it to. Then on our timer, we just have a switch based on all of our states here. And one of the nice things about the way the timer stuff works is we can change the duration of the timer when we transition states. So the timer starts off at 55 milliseconds or whatever. If we need it to change subtly to affect all the different states, we can do that without much effort. So if we're in the climb state, we're going to do this. We're always going to return true on this timer until we get to this point. Then we won't. Okay, so this stays the same. When we're done coming up, we change to the fixed jump frame. We change to the jump state. Here, and actually, we also, well, we'll leave the duration the same for now. And we'll say if Donkey Kong Y is greater than 30, Donkey Kong Y, we're going to do this a little fast. We'll leave it the same 2 pixel decrement. We'll change the timer if it really needs to look different than it does now. Let's see. And then here, we're going to change the animation to anim Donkey Kong stand, and we're going to change the state to intro Kong jump left. All right, so let's check that part. Boom. Okay, oops, that's a bit high. So it's really probably closer to 50. And then what we'll also do is when we transition into this jump up, let's make the timer duration 30 milliseconds. And then when we jump left, let's make the timer duration 250 milliseconds, because that's maybe a little slow, but we'll adjust it once we get that part in there. Okay, boom, almost. Oops, not that one. This is 2. This is 4. And we'll make the Donkey Kong Y position equal to about 55, because he'll come up and we'll land him so that he's on the girder. That's a little fast. I'm going to try to get him on the girder here. And then I actually think we can have he can jump a bit higher than he is now. Okay. And his X, I think he should move to the left about the width of a sprite. Yeah, it's close. Pauline now needs to come into the picture. So if we go to game screen 1, enter, we can find Pauline. Okay. So I think, let me watch the arcade again here. Yeah, so when he lands, she shows up. And he actually doesn't move on the X. That I'm going to leave that out. So when he lands here, we want to grab the Pauline actor, put her in place, and start. Do we want to start her animation? No. We just want to put her on the platform. We want her to show up. Because we're changing him to be in a standing position, so the animation frame has changed. She's part of that climbing. Okay, so he jumps up, he lands, Pauline shows up, perfect. Yeah, we got to fix we're already doing the timer thing, which we shouldn't be. We'll fix that. Okay, so then he needs to jump left. So this one, we need to do 3 times, I think. So let's run this again. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 times. Okay. So five. So here, if CKong, or what is it? CKong jump count is equal to 0, then we're going to change his animation to the roar, which is just a single frame animation. And we're going to change the state to the intro Kong roar state. Otherwise, we're going to check if his Y is equal to or greater than, no, yeah, if his Y is equal to or greater than 50, no, we don't do that. Let's do this, because it starts off so you start off with a negative delta with a count of 5. So we're just going to take Donkey Kong Y and we're going to add the Kong jump delta. And it's not just the Y, it's actually the X as well. So if on Y he's greater than, he doesn't jump that high, maybe he's greater than 36. We're gonna do it this way. Do the delta. If he's less than or equal to 36, then, or, no, we won't do it that way. Else if Donkey Kong y is greater than or equal to 52. So here the Kong delta is going to be a positive 3. Here we're going to go back to a negative 3, and we're going to, if Kong jump count is greater than 0, we're going to do that. So we come into this state. If we've exhausted the jumps to the left, then we go to the roar, which is going to cause his grin on his mouth, basically. And we jump to the roar state. Otherwise, we adjust his position based on our jump delta. So he kind of does this little triangular jump thing. It's not a very fluid or organic jump. It's just a little angular hop. So we're going to make him hop. When he gets to the apogee, we're going to force him to come down. Oh, but, yeah. So x is always negative, right? But the y is not. So the delta is just for the y. X, he's always moving to the left. So if he hits the apogee, we're going to cause him to come back down. If he hits the platform again or gets close to it, so let's clamp him on the platform so that it doesn't have to be exact. If he overshoots or hits the platform, we're going to clamp him to the platform. Then we're going to reverse his jump delta again, and we're going to decrement the number of jumps that he does, right? So it's 5 to the left. So we'll set the animation, and then we don't have sound yet, so we'll come back and do that later. Okay, jump. Ooh, a little slow. Okay, yeah, he's moving too much. Okay, so for, oh yeah, and we set the timer really, it's very slow on that. So let's, we'll set it at 65, and then do 40 here, because the jump is pretty shallow. It's not a huge jump. Boom, 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 boom. Close. So there's one thing we're missing, and that is, I think the delta value is maybe a bit big. 2 might be, nope, that should be 3. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to leave the y at 3. I think the x is a bit large. I think he needs to move a bit less each time. There's also close. 3. Yeah, so the other thing that we need to do is we need to have a wait state here. So what we can do is here, when we finish a jump, we can set the timer duration to 100 milliseconds, and the state here can be intro Kong wait. So this is going to trip approximately 100 milliseconds after he finishes a jump. So here we're going to say if the jump count is not, or is greater than 0, then we're just going to set the state back to intro jump left, and we're going to set the timer to the 65 milliseconds that we had set it for. So what that does, we go through a jump, we delay for 100 milliseconds, we go through the next jump, delay, because he's just kind of bouncing like a little cubert across the platform. And in the arcade, there's a pause. It's close. I would say the pause is maybe just a bit longer. And then we have to fine-tune the jump itself, because he needs to land just to the left of those 2 ladders. I'd say the timing is close. Now, so if we go back, I think he's going to go too far now, but we can adjust that a little bit. That's close. Okay, so let's run the arcade. Okay, yeah, so we're moving a bit too much. We were closer with 2, but what we can do, I think our version is jumping too high. What is that? Oh yeah, perfect. There it is. All right. Oh, but we're going into the wait state. So yeah, so what's happening is this logic should be happening here now. Right, because when we finish a jump, we always go into the wait state. So the wait state will now transition to the roar. Okay. Climb up the ladder, jump up, left, 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 left. Roar. All right. Cool. All right, so now what we need to do is fix Pauline so she's not doing her little dance and yelling help at this point. So in level, I think is where, yeah, this stuff's happening at the moment. So what we're going to do is move this into game screen 1. We're going to put that there. And then in the level header, we're not going to change the, we're not going to do the blinking. That's kind of on a per level basis. Okay. Okay. So now if I run it again, Pauline should not be, she'll just be standing there, which is what happens in the arcade. Yep. Oh, she's not standing there though. Because why? Why is she not standing there? Right, because we haven't set actor animation Pauline Pauline stand right. Right, because the reason she was showing up before is because the code that had set the animation for her shuffle was working. There we go. Okay. There you go. Now, the next step is going to be getting the ladder to vanish as he climbs up. So that, let's run the game again. And this time, let's go into the tile map editor and oops, timers. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Well, we can ignore it. That's, I'm gonna have to add code to disable the timers when we go into the tile map editor. Because what happened is, okay. Now that all the timers have expired. Okay. So if we look, so first, you'll notice that the girders are split. So this is kind of a clever usage of tile mapping where you actually combine, you know, a top and a bottom tile to shift pixels, because otherwise everything has to be on a 8x8 or 16x16 or whatever size your background tile is. It has to be on an exact tile boundary. So by cleverly doing this and splitting parts of something across multiple tiles, you can get interesting effects. So if we go down here to the bottom, you'll notice that the ladder, it's almost not visible, but this is tile D1. So if we go into the tile selection and we go down to D1, you'll see that that tile has two little red dots at the top, just a tiniest portion of a ladder. And you'll notice that if we go across this D row here mimics this F row for these girder tiles, right? So this is how the game makes it look like these girders are going at an angle, at a slope. which is very clever. But in fact, it's just a flat line of tiles, right? But the pixels are shifted within the tiles. These would be the bottoms, right, for those. And also you'll notice that they were pretty clever here in that these all line up. So meaning that the top for this bottom is here. The ladder for this combination is here. So all you have to do is subtract 16 to get to the next kind of configuration. Again, pretty clever, which leads me to believe that I have not looked at the arcade source code, but it leads me to believe that the girders are probably being built programmatically, and which would probably make sense. So what we need to do is we need to have a little bit of code that once Donkey Kong reaches a certain Y position, we toggle a flag, and then inside of our timer, we store the tile, the start tile, which would be in this case 1E, so 31, and we just start working up behind it, right? And so one tile at a time as it goes up. And then what we'd have to do, I think the way I would code this is we'll look at the tile to the left of the tile we're reading here. So we're gonna get this block from the control table, and we're gonna look at the tile to the left of it. The tile to the left of it tells us what normal girder tile it is. If we subtract 32 from that, that would tell us what tile this, or I'm sorry, let me restate that. We're going to look to the tile to the left. That's what this tile should become. Then we go up. If the tile to the left of us is an empty space, which all the empty spaces are tile A, then we just replace this with an A. And so this would be A, this would be A, this would be A, because this is a full tile. It's not a partial tile. And we would just keep going up. Now in this case, this is a partial, and this is a partial. So in the table, if it's one of these, if it's not a full tile, which would be a D0 or an F0, I believe. One of these is a... No, I think it is just this one. Yeah, it's just that one. Yeah, it's D0 or F0. So theoretically, if it's one of those two, we replace it with a blank. If it's any of the others, then we just do the math to offset into the ladder, the correct ladder tile for that partial. And then we just keep repeating that process until we get to, up here, and then we just quickly replace the remaining ones so that they're blank. Then the next step after that, I drew this just eyeballing the game, and the top part, everything up here to this point is identical. And then I think what my plan would be is as he jumps, right, certain portions of these collapse. So I think what we'll do is we'll create a copy. It's not, but here's a trick. It's not just a straight copy. We could do that, right? We could just do a straight copy where we copy these tiles from this map onto the introduction or onto our working background. But really, I think what the game is doing is like every so many frames, it's copying a portion of it, right? So it's a copy across frames. So, and that's what makes the girders look like they're kind of falling. Because if you think about it, if we started copying from here and we copied a chunk and then a chunk and a chunk over several frames while they fall, it makes it look like they're actually falling. So I think that would be how we would make that work, is we would just progressively copy these regions onto our working background control table. So I think what I'll do, because I think that's going to take probably going to take another hour. I'd like to kind of keep this right at around an hour. So what we can do is review what we got today, and then in episode 13 we will resume this part of it, and we'll get the ladder to roll up, and we'll get the girders to fall. And then the introduction sequence is pretty much done. And then once we get sound, we'll come back and we'll fine tune things. So let's take a look at what we did. In the actor header file, we've got the new Donkey Kong jump animation. And then in the module, I adjusted timing on the climb a little bit. And oh yeah, and I also had fixed some other layout issues with some things. And then we created the jump, which is just a fixed frame of him climbing. And then I added in the case for the jump animation. Also, I added a guard here because if you pass a null to disable animation on the actor, this is null here, and then this code was blowing up. So we fixed that. In game, I just commented out the original state push. This is what should be here. This we're using for debugging and development purposes. It just lets us shortcut to that part of the code. In level, I moved this code that was setting up the help blinker for Pauline, because again, that we should be doing this kind of in the actual game screen itself in the state machine. Then in the state machine, I renamed the bonus animation callback to be something a bit shorter. We created a Kong animation callback. We may still use this. I'm going to leave it here for now. If we end up not using it, we'll just get rid of it. And then I moved the help blinker. So Pauline, screams help. She has that little text bubble, speech bubble that comes out next to her. And that's what this timer does. So I moved the timer callback and I moved the setup into the game screen 1 enter callback for the state machine. And then we started working on the long introduction state. So we have a kind of a state machine within a state machine. And this is all driven by this one timer. And depending on which state we're in, we have a case that handles that state. And so we, Kong climbs up the ladder, he jumps onto the top girder, Pauline gets placed on the platform, he jumps left until he's just to the left of the two ladders, and then he does his little roar, grimace, and then in our enter, we set up the intro state variables. We set the animation callback on the Donkey Kong actor, and we create our timer. And probably we'll refactor some of this and clean it up a little bit as we move along. And then also the long introduction now calls actor reset when it leaves, because we're putting sprites on there. We want to disable all that. when we move to the next state so that everything can be set up from scratch. And that's that. Okay. So in the in the next episode, we will finish off this long introduction state, and then we'll go on to the high score entry, and then we'll move into the actual gameplay mechanics, trying to get Mario and the ladder climbing and jumping and hammering. We'll try to get all that implemented, and that's going to take probably several episodes, would be my guess, to kind of get that core mechanic nailed down so it's, has the same feel as the original game. And then we could start layering in the bad guy behavior on each level, on each stage. Okay, thanks for watching. If you like this, give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe. See you in the next episode.